Do you want to venture to darkest Peru and maybe even meet a talking bear in a red hat? We'll cover that and more on episode 8 of Channeling Hallmark, the podcast where we talk about all the things that make us feel warm and fuzzy, like when you eat a tasty marmalade sandwich. We're your hosts, Dylan Cashbaugh
and Keetin Markey.
Today's episode is one that I'm very excited about because we'll be talking about one of my favorite film franchises, Paddington, the infamous bear who comes from darkest Peru. And to go along with that, we'll be talking to a travel expert who just so happens to be planning a trip that really does go to darkest Peru. But before we get to that, Keetin, what kind of tea are we drinking today?
Oh, you guys, they've done it again. The Republic of Tea has actually done a collab for the Paddington in Peru movie, and this tea is literally called Paddington in Peru. It's an orange hibiscus delight. It's caffeine-free, which are always my favorite. And yeah, let's dive into this. Ooh. It's actually, for as strong as it smells, it's super light.
Oh.
It's a very light tea, a light citrus on the finish. It's really good. It's very good.
And you know what it pairs with is also at the same event where we got this Paddington tea, we also got what appears to be orange marmalade sugar cookie to pair with it.
All right. Cookie is like a shortbread cookie, so not super sweet, but covered in the crispy sugar. You know, the big, thick, crispy sugar. So it really kind of kicks, and then there's a little pool of marmalade in the middle. Oh, and stop. Shut up. With the tea, it's too much. It's too good. It's delicious.
So I think we can highly recommend this Republic of Tea Paddington in Peru tea, especially when paired with an orange marmalade shortbread cookie.
Yeah, they really did it right with this little gift bag.
Now, also, we are drinking this out of a Paddington mug, but not only that, we'll also post some photos on Instagram. I have a whole Paddington outfit to go with this episode, so just imagine me in all brown, blue jacket, and a red hat.
You know, that could have been my hot cocoa for this week, is that Dylan, in trying to attempt to Paddington bound to our early screening of Paddington in Peru, went to Target all by himself and bought a actually really cute shirt that fits him really well, that I think he will wear beyond just the Paddington bounding, or Disney bounding, I guess is kind of what it was. And I was just really proud of him. You look so handsome.
Now, that is just how much I love the Paddington movies. But before we talk about those more, Keetin, I want to know what your hot cocoa is this week.
One of my favorite things for my birthday, because my birthday is coming up, is I treat myself, like a treat yourself week. And so I've been making appointments for a facial and to get my hair updated and to get my nails done. And it works out really nice for me, especially this time of year, because the SAG Awards are at the end of February. So I get all of my amazing self-care done, and then just in time to go to the SAG Awards. But specifically, my hot cocoa this week, I want to talk about Masako. Masako is my facialist, and she is incredible. She works at the Room Organic Spa in Los Angeles. If you want an incredible facialist, go to Masako. But she beats the crap out of your face in the best way, and also just helps all the stress melt away. And it's been a really stressful 2025 so far. So the fact that I get to visit Masako just makes me feel warm and fuzzy, and I come out of her chair glowing and just feeling refreshed. And just my hot cocoa is Masako. Shout out to Masako.
She sounds like she can help you to find a nice, warm and cozy life.
Yes, she does. She puts a heated blanket for me to lay on top of while I get my facial done, so I'm nice and warm and cozy. And she just really cares. And I've gotten a bunch of my friends to go to her too. And Masako at the Room Organic Spa cannot speak more highly about. You look snatched after you get out of there. Just snatched.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, but you'll notice. What's your hot cocoa this week?
My hot cocoa that I had recently technically didn't actually happen this week, but it happened recently enough that I think it still counts, and I'm still riding the high from it. And that is watching the LA Fire Aid concert. It was 6 hours of musical performances with a whole range of artists. Really great show. But there was one in particular that really hit me in my feels. and that is Joni Mitchell singing Both Sides Now. So this
song.
is a song that means a lot to me, partially because I think it is featured in one of the most beautiful moments of one of the most beautiful movies ever, and that is Love Actually. So I feel like
We also realized that movie is slightly problematic. It did not age well, but we still love it.
we do still love it, and it was a formative movie for me, and especially that scene when you have Emma Thompson's character, kind of all of the issues that she's been having really hitting her. You hear Both Sides Now play, and it's to me the most heart-wrenching and most beautiful moment in that movie. Thus, that song has always had a very emotional place in my heart. And during the Fire Aid concert, 81-year-old Joni Mitchell comes out. Like, she is in a chair. She can't even stand, but she looks great. And she sings Both Sides Now beautifully. You know, her voice isn't what it used to be, but she carries so much emotion to every word that she sings in that song that I essentially was crying nonstop from when it started to when it finished. It felt like such a release when it was over for me, because it felt like so much tension from all the fires and everything that had been happening finally was able to release because of how emotional Joni Mitchell made me. So that emotional release for me was my hot cocoa, and I loved it.
I love that for you.
That being said, I cannot wait. Let's talk Paddington in Peru.
Okay. Paddington, everyone's favorite Peruvian bear turned Londoner, is back at it with another adventure. And this time, he's going back to Peru for a quest that takes him through the jungles of the Amazon in search of... Well, that's a bit of a spoiler.
Directed by Dougal Wilson, the third installment does have some notable changes, such as Emily Mortimer replacing Sally Hawkins, and primarily taking place in Peru instead of London. But overall, this film franchise has achieved a rare level of accolades for a family-friendly movie series. And I will admit, I am a true believer in Paddington. So Keetin, I'll ask you, what do the Paddington films mean to you, and what is it that makes these movies so special?
The Paddington films, they don't mean nearly as much to me as I know they mean to you. But I think the reason they mean so much to me is because of the joy they bring you, and thus it also brings me a lot of joy to see you happy. But it's just, dare I say, some of the most balanced and perfectly made family films. Like when you kid as an adult can get a good laugh at the more inside jokes, but then it's just so charming and sweet at the same time. Like I think of Shrek often when I think of a great kids film that adults went to see and were like, oh my God, this is great. But Paddington has a softness to it where I feel like even though there is a lot of like kind of fun hidden stuff for adults, it's all warm and fuzzy based. None of it is like crude. And I think that's just what makes it so sweet. And I know at first when you pitched reviewing Paddington, I was like, no, that's not Hallmarky enough. And then I was like, oh my God, no, you're right, Dylan. I was wrong. It is the perfect warm and fuzzy film franchise. And it even includes a bear, which is just the personification of warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, I cannot imagine a more warm and fuzzy thing than what in my head it would be like to hug Paddington Bear. To me, he's probably just like the warmest, softest, fuzziest thing ever. So, and when watching these movies, it feels like you're hugging Paddington Bear.
Or that he's just hugging you. Yeah. Actually, that he's holding me.
Oh.
He's holding me in a warm embrace.
I feel safe in Paddington's arms.
I do too.
I don't think we can necessarily talk too much about Paddington in Peru without talking about the franchise as a whole.
Absolutely.
Because this is one of the most loved franchises there is. I just want to briefly touch on the fact that this movie franchise has been so consistent throughout, where every single movie maintains such an incredible feeling, such an incredible quality, where I don't know, actually I do know, there is I think one film franchise that even compares to it, and that is the Lord of the Rings films. That, like, to me, these are the two examples of what a perfect franchise is.
Don't worry, we will probably touch on those films around Dylan's birthday if he has anything to say on it. You know, I don't think Paddington 1 set out to be a franchise. I think Paddington 1 set out to make a live-action film of this beloved children's story out of London. And the film was so good that and made a good amount of money, that of course they had to come at it again with Paddington 2. And they made it even better, which is it's beyond me when, especially a children's franchise, the second one around is even better than the first. And I think has like a 98 or 99 on Rotten Tomatoes. But going to see the third one, I felt like they made Paddington in Peru for me. It has the warm and fuzziness that all the other ones have. They have the cheeky humor, the jokes, the silliness, but it's like an action adventure Paddington movie, more so than just like bus chases and car chases in London, but an Indiana Jones, a National Treasure, dare I say, Josh Gates and Expedition Unknown, which is one of my favorite TV shows. It has that feel on it. And I could not stop smiling the entire film, except when I was crying tears of just feelings.
So just a note on that franchise, you brought up Rotten Tomatoes. At this moment of recording, which it's still reasonably early, Paddington in Peru has actually the lowest tomato rating of any of the Paddington movies, and that's 93%.
Wow.
93% is the lowest of this franchise. Paddington 1's at 96 and Paddington 2 is at 99. Show me another franchise that is that critically acclaimed.
I don't think they're going to find any. And again, a film franchise that didn't like start out trying to be a franchise. They were just like, wow, this did well. Let's make it even better. So rather than trying to like stick to like a story they all sat around 5 years ago and planned out, they were just like, we're going to make one really good movie with a lot of really good actors. That's the other thing. Can we talk about the incredible actors that are always in these movies, whether they're small cameos or really big roles? I mean, the villain in the first one is Nicole Kidman. Who is just absolutely incredible in it. The villain in the second one is the incredible Hugh Grant. And not going to say villain, but so Dylan, tell us about some of the amazing stars that are in the third one.
Well, there are a lot of great stars in the third one, including some villainous characters and some less so. And that does include the classics from the franchise, like Hugh Bonneville. Like I said, Emily Mortimer replaced Sally Hawkins. Emily Mortimer, still great. But then we also throw Antonio Banderas. We throw in Emma Coleman. Like, amazing people again. And then also, I mean, even the little roles, like Jim Broadbent is in there. I mean, the voice of Ben Whishaw. Like, it's such a good cast all around that I just love watching. I will say, one thing I was disappointed in, I'm going to say this to you now so that you don't get your hopes up too much. Peter Capaldi is not in Paddington in Peru. So I'm sorry to all the Doctor Who fans who really were just coming for Peter Capaldi, but not in Paddington, Peru, still a great movie. But let's transition to some more Paddington in Peru focused conversation rather than the franchise as a whole. Keetin, what did you think about this particular installment in the film franchise?
Well, dare I say it was my favorite.
Wow.
And I really love the first two. I do, not nearly as much as you do. But again, I think the action adventure part of this really got to me in such a joyous way. And it felt like a lot of times I feel like, you know, Paddington being the silly old bear, like he gets himself into these really dumb situations just by making dumb decisions. But like you put him and his family in the middle of Peru, it all makes so much more sense that nobody has any clue what's going on. So these dumb decisions, I'm just like, they're more believable to me rather than Paddington, why did you do that? It's just like, well, what is he gonna do? Like that, like he doesn't know. He's in the middle of a Peruvian jungle. I also really appreciated the llamas. I do have a slight infatuation with llamas right now, thanks to the seasons of The Bachelor and Linda the llama being in episode 1.
Shout out Linda.
Shout out Linda. But I really, really loved the action adventure Indiana Jones overlay on this one. It brought me so much joy, and I have had a crush on Antonio Banderas since I was little. The Mask of Zorro probably was a pivotal film in my childhood, but I love him, and he's only gotten finer, like fine wine with age. And he in this role, being his cheeky, cute, but still suave self, I love him so much. I love Antonio Banderas.
See, I love that we have similar feelings about Antonio Banderas, but for very different movies. Because for me, it's Evita.
Yeah.
That, made me fall in love with Antonio.
I love that it's like, for you, it's Evita. It's me, it's The Mask of Zorro. And like, Evita's like such like a girl power movie, and like Mask of Zorro. I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones and Mask of Zorro. My God.
All right, we're getting
I'm
sidetracked,
sorry,
though.
Antonio.
I think I went into this one with a little bit of apprehension. One, because this is the first movie that isn't directed by Paul King. Paul King directed the first two, and then it's Dougal Wilson directing the third one, who I am not really familiar with. But Paul King still was very involved enough that he was an EP on it. And then the other thing that I was a little hesitant about was no Sally Hawkins, which was a bummer. But it feels like, all right, we're at the third movie of this franchise. We've already had a lot of Paddington shenanigans in London, and it's all been amazing. But like, what can you do with a third movie to really make it feel different? And they, to me, totally achieved a very fresh feeling by going to Peru, by having that adventure element. I was very impressed with how it had the references to previous movies that were great, but it never felt like it was just recycling things from the previous movies. It did all feel very fresh and new, and I loved it. I wouldn't put this as my number one Paddington movie, but I think I would slot it in at number two, and that's saying something.
Yeah, because I know you stand number two hard. It would be very difficult for them to beat number two for you. But this is an issue I do have. God, I hate you're going to be so mad that I say this, but this is an issue that I have between the first two. A lot of the jokes are very repetitive. They're very expected because that is just kind of the quip of Paddington the bear, and his, origin stories in the books and stuff are these silly little problems he gets himself in and then how he somehow gets himself out. I loved this film because they surprised me. They surprised me with musical moments. They surprised me with the story twisting to a different direction. I would say there were so many surprises that were all positive and just made it feel different and more special of a Paddington film.
Yeah, I think we're trying to avoid
spoilers
on this review, which is hard. But I do think we can say there is a musical moment early on in the movie that is absolutely delightful and amazing. I wasn't expecting it at all. And it was such a great surprise that was so funny and so beautifully done.
And we went to see, we got an early access screening of this. So we were in a theater that was packed with people.
Full of Paddington fans. People were sobbing. People were like cheering. Everybody was like laughing at the right jokes, and everyone was having so much fun. And so it was a really, really good audience. And it was one of those things where it's like, this is why you go see a movie in the theater early, because you can get into it with a bunch of the fans, and it just feels like a team. It's a camaraderie of it. Yeah, and I want to say this is actually the first Paddington movie that I've seen in a theater, let alone with an audience that is all Paddington fans, where everyone was laughing at all the jokes. Everyone was crying at all the moments that I was crying at. There were applause at the end. It was such a great experience.
I would agree. I think this is the first Paddington movie I've seen in theaters, and it was a great experience. And there were no children in it. I didn't see any kids in that theater. It was truly all adults.
We saw this movie at 1:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and it was all adults at this theater.
Like, that's so funny. That just kind of registered with me. But I cannot recommend this more. Take your kids. Take your nieces and nephews, take yourself, take your spouses, take your, grandparents. This is a film that every single person, no matter your age, can find joy in. And the theme of the film too is it hit home for me. I was crying. You were crying. I feel like everybody in the theater was crying.
Yeah, and I do want to dig into that just a little bit more before we get into our marshmallow ratings. But the themes of this movie really hit home for me in a lot of ways. Early on, it's so much about what is family to you, especially at a time of change when the parents are going through that, just about to have that empty nest phase where their daughter is going off to college. It feels like their son is very distant because he's a moody teenager. And now Paddington is talking about going to Peru. It reminded me of Toy Story 4 and how Toy Story 4 is all about empty nesting. And this felt like a similar theme at first, but as the movie goes on, that's definitely an element still. but identity as a whole becomes to me the theme. Who are you when you're an immigrant that has your home country, but also comes to a new place and you feel like that new place is your home, but there is something still about your old home that is a part of you. And it's that melding of different cultures and different histories that you have experienced that go into who you are as a person. And I think this movie presented that beautifully in a way that makes me really excited about where my identity grows in the future and what has made me me and what will continue to make me an even more hopefully interesting and cool person in the future.
Yeah, and it going off of that, it was a lot about self-acceptance. And just because you don't live somewhere anymore, just because you're not fully immersed in that culture or attached to where you came from, doesn't mean that that is not always going to be with you, but you can take the positive aspects of that with you. It's so funny when, I won't say when, but there was a moment where I was just like, I wonder if this is how Dylan feels about Indiana.
The answer is probably yes.
Yes. But I think it kind of opens the conversation too of, if you leave a place, when you are closing one chapter and starting another, doesn't mean that that chapter is gone forever. That chapter is always going to be a part of you and is always going to be in your heart. And that's when, that got me. That got me good. It got me good.
Well, knowing how much this movie hit you in the heart, Keetin, what is your marshmallow rating for Paddington in Peru?
That'd be 10 marshmallows, Dylan. That would be 10 marshmallows. I'm still getting goosebumps when I think about how I felt at the end of that movie. I'm like, literally, I have all the feels still, and I have to give it 10. And to be my favorite of the Paddington movies, I can't wait till all of them are out and we can literally like spend a day and just watch them back to back to back.
I don't think I've ever been as in love with you as I am in this moment, because that sounds like such an amazing day. And I am right there with you. 10 out of 10 marshmallows. I cannot imagine a movie that feels more warm and fuzzy and soft and squishy as Paddington in Peru. They did it again. I can't believe the Paddington franchise has been so consistent, but they have. Go see this movie. You will not regret it. You will cry. And it's worth it. It's worth it.
You're going to feel a lot of things. And some of those things will be because of Antonio Banderas. But the other things will be because of the bear with the red hat.
Now that we have talked about Paddington in Peru and how it helped us discover a little bit more about who we are, we're going to talk with a travel expert, Justin Walter, who also can tell us all about Peru and learning just a little bit more about who you are by traveling to some amazing places like Darkest Peru.
Stay tuned.
On today's episode, we're joined by Justin Walter, who, among other things, is planning a trip to Darkest Peru. Justin is a true travel expert, having been to over 50 countries, and now shares his travel knowledge on content like Explore This, Around the World in 80 Seconds, and on his own social media channels. Justin, you have done amazing things, from swimming with sharks to climbing on glaciers. To kick off the convo, do you have a place in the world that you think everyone needs to go?
Oh, already a tough question. I mean, everywhere. Gosh, this is one of my hardest questions when people are like, "What's your top recommendation?" And usually I ask someone a couple questions, and then I give them a specific answer. So I guess let me turn this on you, Dylan. In terms of destinations, what are you into? Are you into nature? Are you into cities? Are you into cultural experiences? Like what kind of fancies you?
I mean, I guess speaking to this honestly and personally, I love nature. I love history. I love exploration, adventure. I'm sure there is a way to combine all those, but I don't know what or where that is.
Are there any parts of the world that you haven't been to that kind of intrigue you?
I have not been to Africa at all.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I guess I haven't been to China, which is another one that I really want to go to at some point.
Okay. All right. So I would recommend as a good starting point for you in terms of Africa, it's going to be a little cliche, but it is incredible. South Africa, where you're going to get a combination of all of those things that you mentioned. I did a 2 week solo backpacking trip through South Africa, and I started in Cape Town and had incredible hiking experiences at Table Mountain, which is basically, I would describe Cape Town as like Malibu times 100. And it is just this like gorgeous coastal town with beautiful beaches, beautiful coastline. Hiking is incredible. There's wineries north of it in Stellenbosch. There's a couple, hours drive away or a plane ride away. You can go to these reserves, Kruger National Park, where you can do wildlife reservations and do safaris, and it's just incredible. And then you can take a road trip down the garden route and go down to these small towns along this route where you can go cage diving with great whites. And South Africa for me was such an incredible experience of really becoming one with nature and seeing nature in its raw natural form. A safari is a highlight. So to answer your question, this is how we got to that answer. Doing a wildlife safari is one of the most incredible experiences because you truly get to witness Mother Nature in its purest form. And doing that for a couple days is definitely a highlight I would recommend. I've done it on both ends, where this last year I just did a trip around the world and I did a budget safari in Kenya, where it was a 7-day safari, and the price was, around like $1,000 price point or so for the 7 days. So the budget version. Then I've also done the other extreme in South Africa. I did like a work experience of a luxury safari experience. Both were very different experiences, but what they offered in commonality was this connection to earth. And at the end of the day, we are animals, people. Let's not kid ourselves. We are animals. So to see other animals in their natural form in safari is incredible. So I would recommend that as definitely one of the experiences.
Oh my gosh, you're like a travel matchmaker. I love it.
Oh my God. Wait a minute. We may have a new idea.
Here's our new business venture.
Give me some top things that you like for travel.
Oh my God.
For you.
Well, okay. First of all, I've always wanted to go on a safari. So if you can convince my husband to that to be our next trip, that'd be amazing. But I love bougie. I love bougie on a budget. But with bougie on a budget, I like history. I like historical venues, historical hotels, just staying in places that feel historic and you feel the age on it. I also really love to experience the culture, whether it's like a cooking class or a dance class, like something that like I want to just be a part of it. And you actually did a trip that I'm wondering if this is what you're going to bring up.
Which one?
The one in Japan. That you did. I saw that and it didn't look bougie, but man, did it look like really living through the culture.
Well, and you just sparked in my mind another answer I have for Dylan and you as well. So I'm going to give 2 answers on this. So last year I did do a 6-month trip around the world. And whenever people ask what were your highlights of the trip, my top 2 were, one, going back to Dylan's answer, another version of a safari that is a must in everyone's lifetime that I would recommend is the Galapagos Islands. And that is a version of a safari, but in beautiful remote islands off the coast of Ecuador. And it is insane, mind-blowing, as if you've been sucked into a National Geographic nature documentary, but you're swimming and you're with sea lions and turtles and sharks and volcanoes are erupting if you have a good luck on timing. And it was like this mind-blowing nature experience that was so incredible. But back to you, Keetin. The other thing I say, my new favorite country is Japan. Japan is an experience of being teleported into a different universe that when I was there, I was like, this is the future, but it's their present. And it is such a different form of culture and way of living in such a remarkable country that has beautiful nature, deep rooted cultural history, delicious food, cultural immersion that just walking through the streets of Tokyo or Kyoto or smaller towns, you're just like, where am I? This is wild. Also, it felt so safe. Everywhere I went in Japan, I was literally walking around Tokyo at like 2 a.m, just wandering streets. I had no idea where I was. Would I do that anywhere in the world? No, but it was so safe in Japan and in Tokyo that it was mind-blowing. And what I did outside of Kyoto, I did a cultural immersion homestay with a family off of Airbnb where I was living with a daughter and her father for 3 days. We cooked every meal together, and I stayed in their home that was like a traditional ryokan. And in a ryokan in Japan is those like beautiful flat bedded rooms where the doors open up, depending, sometimes it's into spas or onsens, but theirs was their home. So it wasn't the bougie version, but Keetin, there's a lot of bougie versions you can go to there. And it was so awesome to, one, I'm not a big cook and I'm not a big foodie, but it was so beautiful to connect with this family cooking meals together. We literally sat down in their home where they had in the ground, the fire pit where we were making our food and eating together. And the father kept pouring me sake and giving me beers. He didn't speak much English, but his daughter did. So she was translating, but we were communicating through laughter, through eating, through smiles. We played games together. And it was just such a beautiful experience where I did get that local cultural experience. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend Japan. It is one of my favorite places now, and I can't wait to get back.
Oh, I love that.
And Peru, by the way.
Yeah,
Can't wait
we'll
till we
get
get
into
to Peru.
Peru.
I know, we will get into Peru.
Before we get into Peru, obviously you are so knowledgeable about travel to the point where like this has become your brand completely in your career. But tell us a little bit about your background and how you kind of found this path for yourself to being this travel expert and basically the most amazing travel matchmaker I've ever met.
Yes. So I grew up in the Chicagoland area. Shout out to Chicago. And I started watching the TV show Survivor when I was a kid. And I remember watching it and just allowing it to transport me around the world. And growing up in the Midwest, having like our family vacations were to the Jersey Shore and to Universal and Disney in Florida. So it was just like a traditional upbringing in terms of what it meant to travel in terms of kind of US destinations. And I remember watching season 2, the Australian Outback, and just promising myself at the age of 16 that I will one day go to the Outback, go to Ayers Rock, and see Australia. So I made that kind of promise to myself at 16, inspired by Survivor. And then when I was in college, I went to Boston College, and it was time I decided I wanted to study abroad. And I was a political science major, philosophy minor, thinking I was going to go to law school. And my professors were all, you should go to Europe. You should go to South America. And I was like, no, I'm going to Australia because of Survivor. So I didn't tell them that, but I was like, no, I'm going to Australia. And I always had this like desire and passion to go to Australia. So I did. I studied abroad through Boston University outside of Boston College. But while I was there, I wasn't with anybody from my school. So it was like I went out on my own, and I, had to start over in this abroad program. First time truly like leaving the country for a long extended time. And it was where I started developing this confidence in myself of like, oh my gosh, there's so much in the world to see. And all I want to do is see more of it. And when I asked my study abroad classmates, does anyone want to go to the Australian Outback with me? No one wanted to go with me. So then I came to this crossroads of like, am I going to go by myself, or am I going to like allow them to not allow me to fulfill my dream of going to the Outback? So I decided, no, I'm going to go and take my first ever solo backpacking trip. So I booked a flight. I booked a trip with a tour group to go explore the Australian Outback. And it was the moment that I would go back to forever to say that that moment changed my life. It was the first moment where I really realized I don't need anybody to explore the world. There is so much to see, but also there are so many other people doing it that if I explore the world as a solo traveler, I absolutely loved it. And I have a journal from the Australian Outback that I get like emotional and like kind of teary-eyed and just like kind of warm fuzzies that I wrote under the stars in a sleeping bag. Like, I do not want to live a 9-to-5 regular traditional job in life and allow other people to decide what my career will be. I want travel to be like the most important thing, and to have a fulfilling life full of experiences, and to follow my passion. And that was at 21 years old. And here I am now at 40 years old. And like you said, like travel has become my brand, my niche, my passion. All the work I'm doing now in some way, shape, or form is connected to travel. And Keetin, because you work there, like even starting off this year, I was on the Jennifer Hudson show as a travel expert. And I just had this moment, and I journaled after it. And I was just like, wow, remember that 15-year-old boy that used to watch Survivor, imagining this life of adventure and travel and becoming a version of his own Jeff Probst. And then I really realized, like, no, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, and I've had success doing it. It has not been easy. It has taken a lot of work, a lot of hustle, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of struggle in many ways, but I wouldn't change it because I do love travel so much. And I think that exploring this world and helping other people do that and getting to inspire that. And then now coming up, I'm going to start actually taking people on trips. It's just, I'm really excited that I'm continuing to get to do travel as a career.
I love that. It's amazing hearing your excitement for all this. And I actually just have to kind of hone in on one thing real quick, because you talked about your journaling when traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, I would go on road trips with my family, and my parents would say, hey, here, take a journal, write every day when we go traveling. And that's something that I've kind of stopped doing as I've gotten older. But hearing you talk about it kind of makes me want to start it up again. What is your experience with journaling like? And is it something you recommend people do when they travel?
Oh my gosh. Ooh, I literally am getting teary-eyed because I have multiple journals. I have a journal that I have for traveling that I used to keep on my own. And then this last or 2 years ago, I decided to take a journal and have it be my travel journal that I would allow people along the way to write messages and notes to me. So I have 2 years now of a travel journal that has entries both from myself, but then also entries from whether I've taken friends or family on trips or people that I've met on my travels. And, recently when we had the LA fires and I had to go through my house and decide what are the items that I am going to take and prioritize, my travel journal and my other journals were number one on my list. I just went on a trip to Tahoe with my high school best friend who we've known each other for 25 years. And I've been going through some personal struggles recently at the start of this year in terms of some relationship stuff. And as any high school friend would do, she said, take out your journal and read it. And I read my journal entries from the last year and a half to her at 40 years old. And why I'm sharing all this is because, yes, journaling is such a powerful practice that whether it's for personal, for love, for yourself, for travel, whatever it is, oh my gosh, I highly recommend it because it not only helps you process in the moment, but then in the future, it will help you look back at the past to then realize, how did this impact me and how has it shaped me? But then you have that recollection. That's such a powerful piece of product that you did yourself at that moment in time. So yes, start journaling again.
Great.
I love that.
So we just watched Paddington in Peru. And if you're familiar with the franchise, a big part of it is all about this bear from Peru. We see a lot of jungle. And he always refers to it as darkest Peru. Have you been to Peru? And does it seem like the kind of place that you might be walking through the jungle and you run into a talking bear?
Well, I have been to Peru, and I would hope that I'd walk into the jungle and find a talking bear. I went to Peru. I've been there twice. I went there when I was, I believe, 27 or 28, and I did a solo backpacking trip, 10 days through Peru. And then that's where I did do Machu Picchu, which is, I think, a traveler's rite of passage. I think that is a spot and destination that there are some spots that are, on everyone's bucket list because they deserve to be. And Machu Picchu is one of those spots. And then fast forward to last year, I did a trip to Peru. My trip around the world was in honor of my 40th birthday. I did a hashtag 40 for 40 new destinations for turning 40 years old as like a 6-month trip around the world. And as a part of that, I just one day journaled about what are destinations that I've always wanted to go to on my bucket list that I haven't gone on. And then I kind of put together a route and a trip that started going after a lot of those destinations. And one of those was doing ayahuasca in the jungles of Peru. So that was my trip to Peru last year, which I know we'll talk about. But yes, I have been to Peru. I would highly recommend going to Peru. And in general, like taking a scope back, I think South America in general is also just like such an incredible place to go to. I know a lot of Americans will gravitate towards going to Europe or, more traditional destinations, but I really do love South America, and Peru is tops in South America.
So I know your upcoming trip to Peru that you'll be leading is based somewhat on the trip you took last
Yeah.
year. So tell us a little bit more in depth about your trip last year, and then how that has led you to now wanting to bring other people to experience what you experienced.
I really wanted to use my 40th birthday as kind of an excuse, both professionally and personally, to do something I've always wanted to do, and that was take like a long-term 6-month trip around the world. And like I said, one of the stops on it was Peru, and I had done ayahuasca 2 times before. And for anyone who is not familiar with what ayahuasca is, in layman's term, it is a Peruvian plant, a form of plant medicine that people will consume, and it has healing properties and like plant medicine properties of giving people a spiritual experience that will some way, shape, or form hopefully help them break through trauma or negative energies in their life or things that are holding them back. The way I would describe it is ayahuasca as a plant medicine really goes into the individual's body, the individual's life, and it targets parts of that person's life that in some way, shape, or form is blocking them from being a better version of themselves, from holding on to anxiety, from holding on to fear, from holding on to things that are just not serving them well in their life. And oftentimes, depending on if the person has done work or has not done work in their life, it goes after the thing that is holding you back the most at that moment in time.
So let's talk about your trip. Let's talk about when you're taking people to Peru, what they can expect, and why they should join you.
Sure. So the trip is planned for April 12th through the 19th, and it is outside of a small town in Peru in the Peruvian jungle. The town is called Iquitos, and then it's an hour drive outside of the town. So most likely people will be flying into Lima and then Lima to Iquitos, and then I'll be arranging the transportation from the small airport to the jungle. And the center is called Aya Madre Center, Healing Center in the Peruvian jungle. And it is founded and run by a female shaman. And this has been her gift and her calling for her entire life. This is all she's done, and she is very talented at it. But in terms of the experience, how it is different from like most, I would say, ayahuasca experiences that I've seen or heard people go on, is it really is kind of like a hands-off experience in terms of there's 3 ceremonies that are set up, and beyond that, the center itself allows you then just do as you please in terms of free time. You're in the center. You stay in tambos, which are wooden huts, handmade huts that have a bed. They have mosquito nets and they have a desk. There's no power. So everyone has like an individual tambo. Even if, let's say, you guys went as a couple, you would have to stay in your own individual tambo. You could obviously hang out with each other throughout the experience, but in terms of like having your own space, everyone's required to have their own tambo, their own bed, their own kind of quarters. And when I say it's a rustic experience, this is not a 5-star luxury resort or hotel. You know, there's no power in the tambos. There is power in the kitchen area, which is, again, another wooden hand-built hut where all the meals are provided and cooked for, and the meals are very clean and basic, rice and meats and fruits and vegetables, and that's it. And the center is in the beautiful, lush jungles of Peru. There's a river that runs through the property that every day I would go into the river, and it was just like so purifying to go into that river every morning, and then even after ceremonies sometime. The stars at night are just incredible. There's no light pollution, so looking up into the sky every night, it was just like someone had taken glitter and thrown it up into a black ceiling. And what I also found was when I was there for myself, compared to a lot of other ayahuasca experiences, there's a lot of, in the ones I've done in the past, there's a lot of forced sharing and kind of forced like community. Whereas what I'm going to do as someone who's like creating this experience beyond what the retreat center is offering, I'm going to create like optional experiences in sharing collectively, individually, with myself, with the group. Ask the group of people who I have, whoever eventually goes, you know, what do you have any special skills or talents? Like if you like yoga, if you want to offer teaching yoga or breath work, and make it a really kind of collective experience. So I'm excited to kind of orchestrate and put together what I think are like a hybrid model of, if you're someone that likes to share and wants to share, you'll have that opportunity. If you're someone that wants to keep what you're going through personal and reflective to yourself, great, you will have that opportunity. So it really is going to be kind of a choose whatever is best for you in that moment in time. And even if it changes along the way, that's okay. And I will be there the whole time to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. Everyone has someone they can go to and rely on in terms of if it's personal, if it's logistical, or whatever that might be. And I'm just excited to, and whenever I talk about ayahuasca or wherever I talk about doing an ayahuasca experience, I always get, oh, I want to do that, or I've been interested in that. But there's always such a hesitancy people have about it. So if anyone who's wanted that or has had that feeling and has seen me go through it and has seen the positive impacts it's had on my life, which I can share with you about those, I am excited to give that experience or help someone get to that experience.
So I am from Indiana.
Yes.
Let's assume there are people listening from the Midwest who may have a lot of that stigma around ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out mom and dad.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who maybe isn't like, this person's probably not going to be, oh, you've sold me on this trip right away. But like,
Sure.
just what can you say to make those people a little bit more open-minded to the idea of ayahuasca?
Yeah. I think one thing that's so interesting about it is, one, when you talk to mostly anyone, I would say a majority of people that have done ayahuasca or a form of plant medicine, most people will share the positive impacts that it has had in their life and the profound impacts. But the reason in American culture and Western society that when those people start talking about that experience, it seems woo-woo, it seems hippie, it seems like cuckoo. And it seems that way because it is not normal in our culture and society to have profound positive life impacts off of plant medicine. And I keep saying plant medicine because that is what it is. And I fully believe it. The healing properties that I've experienced through ayahuasca, through helping me get through trauma in my life, through helping me let go of things in my life that I have not been able to let go of through traditional therapy, through friends and family. I can't explain it, but it was ayahuasca that helped me get over a 3-year traumatic event in my life that I went to therapy over and I cried over and didn't know how to let go over. And something about the ayahuasca, it truly allowed me to replace resentment and anger in my life for gratitude and grace and thankfulness. And that is something that I cannot explain how it did it, but it did it. And I think it is a really powerful experience that I would recommend. And I would challenge someone who's questioning, ayahuasca, is if they know other people who have done ayahuasca, ask them, how was your experience? How did it impact and change your life? I could go down a list of my friends and people that I know who have had life-altering and life-changing moments because of ayahuasca. And I have seen like the positive and profound impacts it has had on their life because they took the risk and they did ayahuasca. So that would be kind of how I would share and say that it is a powerful, powerful tool that is in our grasp and in our reach. And it just depends on what are you going through in your life and what does your specific life need at this point in time to help you live a better life.
I'm sold.
I'll send you the link to put your deposit down.
No, I think it's really interesting too that essentially you talk about travel and the benefits of travel being, seeing different places, experiencing different things that you never had before, and that kind of opening your mind in new ways that it hadn't before. And I guess this almost sounds like ayahuasca or things like that can almost just be another step in that same process of experiencing new things to open your mind in new ways. Similar to travel, this is just another journey you can take.
100%. It is. And I think life is all about experiences. So for me, life is like soaking up and living as many experiences as I can possible. And something like ayahuasca and travel is something that I am so like a proponent of because it is this experience that is taking us outside of our comfort zone, outside of our norms to grow, to learn, to evolve. And what I'm excited about this trip too is literally people have traveled here from all over the world to literally take a week out of their life, a week to say pause, I'm going to stop. I'm going to reflect. I am going to ask myself the questions of what is important to me in this life. Am I on the path to achieving that? Am I doing the things that are for my highest good in my existence? Self-love. I mean, I haven't even said it yet. Ayahuasca is a form of self-love. Like, one of the things I did in my last ayahuasca ceremony was I was journaling and thinking about like my search for love in life. And, I've been in love like several times, and just getting out of a relationship with someone I was in love with. And it has been a struggle in the last couple months. But what I'm sharing is like, even on that retreat, and I went back and read this journal entry, I wrote an entry to myself that was like, Justin, you've been looking for a partner in love, but at the end of the day, the number one person is you. Like, if you love who you are and you love that part of your life, in which I do, that the source of love has to come through me individually, and then someone else will complement my life and not complete it. And that's one thing that ayahuasca, I think, really does have a profound impact on people, is it really helps people start looking at themselves and how do they or do they not love who they are, and how can they work on improving that? Because when we love who we are, that will shape so many other aspects in our life. And I do think that ayahuasca is just a gift. It is a gift.
I love that.
So maybe this Valentine's Day, people should work on loving themselves a little bit more.
Yes.
I think so. This is coming out right before Valentine's Day,
Yes.
this episode. So I think that's a huge pitch to love yourself and maybe take a trip where you're just going to shut things off and focus on you and self-love for 1 week. Speaking of things that bring us self-love and warm and fuzziness, Justin, there's a thing that we talk about every week on the show, our hot cocoa moment.
Basically, is there something that makes you feel warm and fuzzy? The kind of way that you do, like when you're holding a nice cup of hot cocoa, maybe it's got marshmallows, maybe it doesn't, however you like your hot cocoa. But when you take that sip of hot cocoa and it just makes you feel, yes, everything is all right in the world. Is there something that you've experienced lately that has given you that feeling?
Yes, I would say that so far in 2025, it's been a rough year for a lot of reasons, right? I would say that kind of even linking this to what we were just talking about in terms of self-love, I'm just getting out of a relationship and a breakup that has been emotional for me, and I was so moved by the amount of love and support from my family and friends that showed up for me. And it was so incredible. But why I'm sharing this is because I decided, for the next month or two, I'm going to start dating again. And you know what I'm going to date? I'm going to date myself, and I'm going to date my friends. And I'm going to take myself on a couple dates that I would plan for my partner and treat myself the way I treat the person I love. And then I'm going to do that with my friends as well. And why I'm bringing that up is because one of my other friends who was going through a breakup recently, I started challenging him, like, okay, what would you do for your partner tonight? Or how would you show up for someone you love? And that's the way I want you to start showing up for yourself. And then I'm applying that lesson to myself. And one of the things I did yesterday, I took myself on a date to the Korean spa. And it was just like, I took myself in an afternoon. I was there for 4 or 5 hours, and I just treated myself to a Korean spa day in Koreatown here in Los Angeles. And it was so nice to just like, that gives me warm fuzzies of not only being in the sauna and the steam room and the hot tubs, but it was just like, I had a long week of work and a lot going on. And it was just like, I'm taking a day to just give some self-love. I love a good Korean spa.
Yes.
That's going back to Japan. Japan has the best spas in the world.
I'm going to Japan.
Insane.
I love a spa. Do you want to do a solid pitch for your trip, where they can find it, where they can follow you, and the dates again, so, and the deadline to sign up?
Yes. Okay. So I can be followed on social media at Your Bucket List Guide on Instagram and TikTok. I have a website, yourbucketlistguide.com, and there's a tab that says trips and trip planning. And under that, there is the link to my Peru trip, the ayahuasca trip, that is going to be April 12th through April 19th. The deadline to set up is February 12th. And it's a $500 deposit. And then once we get the minimum number of people, then the trip is on. And then it gives us 2 months from February 12th to March 12th for me to make sure everyone has their tickets booked, everyone's got their agendas ready, everyone feels super prepped and ready to go. So it's a good enough time, 2 months before the trip goes, and then we'll have an incredible week together in the jungles of Peru. And yeah, that's kind of, those are the spots to find me at. Your bucket list guide, Justin Walter, and that's about it.
I love it.
I mean, just imagine if we recorded a podcast from the jungles of Peru.
There's no electricity, Dylan.
No,
I have
there
batteries.
There is in the kitchen.
There's batteries,
There
you
is
know?
in the
Okay.
kitchen. If you want to make that happen, we will put that on the agenda.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Justin.
coming
This was
on.
amazing.
We'll include links to all of that in the show notes, and hopefully people will give you a follow because you make some really awesome stuff.
That was our amazing conversation with travel expert Justin Walter. And if you want to join him in the darkest Peru, we will put all the information to join his trip in our show notes. Dylan, what else should they keep an eye out for?
Well, one thing they should do is follow us on our social medias like Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky, where we are at Channeling Hallmark. But also, we really want to know what you guys think. We're 8 episodes in now. We're kind of hitting our groove a little bit, and we're really looking for your feedback. So if you listen to us, please leave a rating, leave a review, comment your thoughts on the episodes, and just let us know what you think, because we want to hear from you, our wonderful and brilliant and intelligent and super cool listeners.
If you want to follow just Dylan or I, you can follow me at Keetin Markey and Dylan at DP Cashbaugh.
And don't forget to channel Hallmark in your life.
Stay cozy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Channeling Hallmark is an independently produced podcast and is neither sponsored nor sanctioned by Hallmark or any other entity. Thank you for listening.